Oh, I think we're recording. Okay. All right. Well, I'm super excited today and honored to speak with the amazing Catherine Edwards. Her and I had a brief chat a couple weeks ago, and we really want to bring awareness to the animal kingdom, what messages they have for us at this time, and how we can really strengthen the human-animal bond, and how that relates to children, which is my focus, as many of you know watching this. Those of you watching Catherine's channel, you probably may not know much about me, and I'll tell you a little bit about myself. But first, I'd like to hand the floor over to Catherine, and thank you so much for joining me today. And give my audience just a very brief background, because I'm sure 99.9% of them know who you are. But what's relevant about our conversation today is really we're focusing on lifting people up and focusing on the animals and what their needs are and how they're here to help us right now. So welcome, Catherine.
Oh, thanks, Sherri. I mean, I was so excited after our talk last week because I've been following your work right from when I first started. I think I saw you on Jean-Claude first. And it's so exciting to have someone like you that's really, really focusing on solutions and changing things moving forward, and not just like little incremental changes, throw away the old and let's start again with what we do want. And really, Sherri, that's what I do with animals, because what I do, I mean, I'm a biologist, I'm a holistic health coach for humans and animals. I do animal iridology, I do zoo pharmacognosy, which animals self-medicating. I do environmental enhancement, red light therapy, animal communication, healing. I'm also a holistic practitioner for humans. But really, all of that is a little bit irrelevant, because what I really do is try and make the human animal bond and life better. What can we learn from our animals? How can we see the world through their points of view? What can they teach us? What can we help them with? Because we have got this amazing relationship with animals, which is so beneficial to humans. But quite honestly, if I'm being brutally honest, often that's not reciprocated back from the other side of things. And what's been so beautiful about the conversations that you and I and other people have been involved in over the last few years is I think people are realizing that we need to question everything. And just because we've always done something one way doesn't make it right, and doesn't necessarily justify for coming on like that. So when you and I had an off-camera talk a couple of weeks ago, I was so excited to hear what you were doing. And it's so up my street, because when people do throw away that roadblock and go back to common sense and brilliant communication on all levels with all creatures, great and small, everything around us shifts for our own lives, and very importantly for the animals' lives as well.
Absolutely. And it's all about full circle. I think a lot of people are reaching this pivotal marking point where they're looking back at their life and reflecting. And it's funny because I started in my career since I was a little girl. I was an only child. I was lonely, and I was different and quiet. And, I talked to the animals. I learned to talk to the animals and communicate with them before I could really communicate with other people. And that's the sad truth about it, is that the animal kingdom really saved my life. And I wanted to work with animals and never wanted to work with people. So I dedicated a good portion, 20 years of my life, I've been working with animals. And I started out wanting to be a veterinarian. And I was terrible at math and really bad with a lot of the sciences like chemistry. I was terrible at it. And honestly, I was failing out of a lot of those classes. My brain just doesn't think that way. I am more of a right brain type of person. So I wasn't getting it. But I was a really, really good veterinary technician. I worked part-time at a veterinary hospital. And, I fell in love with that, because the technicians are like nurses. They're the ones that truly develop relationships with the animals, and the veterinarians tell them us what to do. And then we go take care of the animals, and we have that bond with the animals. And I really loved that. And then I got into critical care, and I was working with animals in the ICU, and I loved it. I just felt so fulfilled, and I was filled with such a sense of joy, because I was able to really dedicate, those 10 hours of each of my shift to my patients essentially. And I thrived in that environment. But through that period of time, I felt such sorrow. I was on such a high, but on such a low, because I thought, gosh, there's got to be a better way to treat these animals, and I was working in the top emergency centers, facilities in Los Angeles, California, and then in here in Maryland. So it wasn't lack of care or equipment or amazing veterinarians, but I thought, gosh, this is brutal. Seeing animals in the most unbelievable conditions. So I wanted to learn energy healing for them, and I started communicating with them more and saying, what is it that you need? And I learned energy healing for them, because I wanted to figure out what else we could do for them. And I've always had a passion for African animals. Don't know why. I didn't actually have a lot of life with them, so it's not about that. I think it's a deep respect for the elephants and the lions and the cheetahs and the rhinos and all of that. And I wanted to work with them at the zoo. And so naturally I gravitated over to working as a veterinary technician in a zoo setting here in the National Zoo in DC. And that was my dream job. At least I thought that was my dream job at the time. I was like, I'm going to work at a zoo, but I'll care for them. I'll help care for them. And 10 years of my life I spent with them. But I went through this kind of dark night of the soul, because I once I got there, I didn't like the animals at the zoo. I thought, this is something really wrong with this, and seeing these animals in cages and these small yards, I thought, this is not a life for them. And so I've gone through my ups and downs and my relationships with the animals. And, when I was on what we call pharmacy, we go out we rotate and do different things. So we have clinics where you do surgeries and things in the hospital. And then pharmacy, you go out and you go in the park and you take care of animals, you do treatments, you bring medications, things like that. And so when I would take those opportunities in the morning to walk the park before there were no people there, no guests, and I would stop with the bison or the gorillas or whatever animals were outside, the bears, and I would communicate with them, and I would feel such heaviness in my chest for them, and I would apologize to them. I'm so sorry you're here. And I had the most profound messages from them where they said, don't feel bad for us. We chose this. We chose to come in so that we can teach and help people, human beings, learn about us, learn about our behavior for the purpose of humanity respecting us and understanding us. But the issue is it got out of hand. And now a lot of them are trapped. And so they said, you feeling bad for us, all you're doing is contributing to the negativity and the low vibration. And that was a huge epiphany for me in life in general. And I use that for anything. Instead of pitying, instead of feeling so bad, instead of worrying about the children and the animals and all of these dark things, then you focus light on that, so that you don't contribute to the darkness. And that changed the trajectory of my life. These animals changed my life. And I had such a profound respect for them. And I eventually transitioned out. But as I started working with my clients, adults, doing energy healing, and then children, and really expanding what it is that I do and who I want to work with, I thought to myself, I had this, again, another sense of sadness. I felt like I was abandoning the animals. Like I felt like they thought Sherri left them and she was going on to work with people, and I didn't love them anymore. And I had this really like this pull, like, which way do I go? I can't do both. And now I look back in hindsight, 10 years later, now that I'm doing what I'm doing and working with children and this education, which we'll talk about, it's coming full circle, because I thought, what was all of that about with the animals? And now I'm like, oh, I have this deep respect and understanding for the animal kingdom, that I need this knowledge, because what I'm doing now is bringing the two together, which is what we're going to talk about today with the animals and the human bond and human animal bond, and reestablishing that respect, like you talked about, because up until this point for generations, it's been truly a one-way street for animals, and the way people lack of respect for the animals and the way they're treated as food and entertainment. And that is absolutely not the case. And I feel ready now to speak out about it and help people redirect how they look at animals. And the animals are now joining in, and they want to help us do that. And now they want to work with the children, so that the generations to come really understand what they're here for, what their role is, and what they have to say. And so I wanted to to speak about that today, because I've never had an opportunity in an interview, because we haven't really focused on animals in any of the interviews. But they're my love. They're my first love that I've ever had before my husband and my children. I put animals before myself in my job. I would do anything for them. And now I understand why, and so the road that we navigate for anybody watching this may not always be a straight line. You might veer off in different directions, but I guarantee you it's for a purpose, because when you look back in hindsight, you realize all of these things that you've done has a reason, has a significance, and it makes you who you are. And so I wonder your journey, Catherine. Have you talked about that in a while? I wonder, kind of, you looking back, what got you to where you are right now?
Yeah, I mean, gosh, there's so much I want to unpack in what you've just said. Just before I go on to my journey, I'd like to say about the animals, there's a lot of understanding. And of course, everyone who's watching this is going to have their own belief systems, their own perception. And there's a lot of people say that, their understanding is that animals come here to help us humans through their journeys. I'm not someone that prescribes to that at all. I feel it's much more of a two-way thing. And I think, to think that other species are put on this planet just to help humans in their journeys, for me, doesn't resonate with me at all. I think if we talk about a spiritual side of things, and we think and we truly believe what we say about that all things are connected, that means there's no judgment and all. There isn't a hierarchy in nature, because, put a human in a cage with a lion, I know which one's going to win if the human hasn't got a gun. So, but my journey, I agree with everything you just said there, in terms of the fact that my journey has been very mixed. And now I feel that everything I've been doing over my many, many varied careers has brought me to this point. So I studied as a biologist because I love animals. And I absolutely love studying. There's not a day that's gone by since I've been an adult where I'm not studying and learning new things, either intellectually, practically, energetically. And that's really, really important to me. And I love my studying biology, but I steer well clear of the animal experiment side of things. In fact, I used to get into a lot of trouble at university by releasing a lot of the animals. I'd sneak in at night, and my friends and I would release a lot. But by the by, in terms of when I graduated from university, you could either go into the medical profession, the pharmaceutical profession. Animal behavior was my real speciality. But at that stage, it was disappearing off around the world, studying animals in various locations. And I had a very old horse at the time, and I couldn't leave her. So I went off traveling, came back, and sort of thought, what do I want to do? And went got a normal job. And I've had jobs, in a very quick nutshell. I've spent quite a lot of time in environmental management, studying air quality, water quality, waste disposal, what we as humans are doing to the environment. And I've worked in telecoms, so on the environmental side of things. So I've got experience in EMF. And then I've worked in project management and in the healthcare sector, so I could see how corrupt the data reporting was. So I've had all these different careers, and together, when 2020 hit, I was like, my God, I can completely see how the words we're not allowed to say on here, 5 and then the letter, are linked to a lot of the health issues. I know how corrupt the pharmaceutical industry. I know how they've suppressed natural remedies, because during this whole time of my career, on the sideline, I was studying all my naturals. So the iridology, the herbal medicine, animals self-medicating, light and energy therapy. So I've always been studying that. And then I got to a stage in my career where I thought, right, I really can't be stuck in this corporate world anymore. It just doesn't align with me at all. So therefore, I was then built up enough of my own clients to actually make the jump and go full-time working for myself with the animal and human health work. So I agree, all these bits of the jigsaw puzzle, putting it together. And I think the important thing is for all of us, you and I are so solution-based, is learning the lessons from what we've learned along our journey. And then how are we going to do things differently? Because it's not about guilt. It's not about pity, as you said, but it is very much, there's no point these animals, these humans having been through these things if we're not going to learn and make different decisions from this moment onwards. So my passion and what I've been doing for the last 15 years or so is really working very closely, either in person or remotely, with people to really get them to almost unlearn everything they've been taught about how to raise animals. So you and I were talking off air about horse riding, and horse riding is, you know, if I came along to your pet dog, I hate the word pets, but you know, your family dog, and put a metal bit in its mouth and started yanking on it, I'd be arrested for cruelty. If I got a bit of metal and started poking it in the ribs, like people do with wearing spurs, if I put something on its nose to stop its breathing, to control it, all of these, if you did that to another species, would be considered cruelty. And yet, because it's accepted practice for horsemanship, we think it's okay. And that's just one example. And you know, I've got a horse that I ride. I've got a few horses, but I only ride one of them. And I don't ride with a bit in the mouth. I just have a rope halter. I have a treeless saddle, so it's not putting stress on his spinal cord. He doesn't wear shoes. You know, if I put metal shoes on you, Sherri, and asked you to run around the block, I don't think your body would appreciate it much. Not just from a physical concussion point of view, but from an energetic grounding point of view as well. So a lot of people sort of say, and they genuinely mean it, this isn't a criticism, it's literally just, let's question everything and leave our egos at the door and really be prepared to say, what do the animals need us to know? Exactly like I perceive you're doing with the educational or teaching system with the children. Let's not try and mend a broken system. Let's really look from scratch and ask the common sense question. Does this make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. And that is the foundation of what I'm trying to create with the children. You know, and I'm not a child an educator for children. I'm not a teacher. I haven't worked in the school system. You know, the only experience I have is teaching. I do teach. I teach a lot. I've been teaching for my whole life, whether it was on the job. I've in every single position I've ever worked in, every job, I've become some sort of a lead position or a trainer because I genuinely love to teach. But not in the school system. And I have taught children for the last few years, various things like Reiki and mindfulness and tapping and all sorts of intuitive development courses, and they get it so quickly, and they're so bright. They're so limited in the school system, and because of the whole, I'll just say the last few years and the facade that's been going on and everything and the breakdown and all in the buildup and all of the chaos, it's really become the forefront of everybody's mind, especially parents, because they started to wake up and see what it is that their children are not getting, and what they're lacking, and now they're concerned. They're really concerned about it. And a lot of those parents were my clients saying, "What can I do?" And you know, and I don't tell people what to do. I give them suggestions, but over time, I realized what my journey is about is not creating a spiritual center for children, which is what I really wanted to do. I wanted to make a beautiful sanctuary for children in my area that they could come on the weekends or after school and take classes and sit outside and do meditation and yoga, and it like almost like a retreat, but just for them every weekend, and have horses and all sorts of farm animals and animal communication classes and all sorts of things. And it really blew up in a beautiful way though. And I realized, gosh, our children need more. They need us to really fight for them and advocate for them. And so the centers that I'm creating, because I'm trying not to use the word school, because to me, school has a negative connotation. It's all about programming, and that's not what I'm doing. I'm trying to free the children and create an opportunity where we can rebuild something better. And it doesn't have to see. That's the issue with society in this closed system where we believe we have free will, but we don't have free will. It's controlled free will based on those that are controlling us, the puppets and the puppeteers and all of the different levels of hierarchies that we have been in. We feel like we have free will, but we actually don't. And I'm trying to create that. So what my vision is not to create another uniform system. My vision is to create something that is organic and fluid so that we can change as we grow, and parents have an input, the children have an input, everyone has an input, you know. And I have a lot of parents contacting me saying, well, what's your curriculum? What's your grading system? How is my child going to go from your school to college? And I'm like, whoa, pull the reins back a little bit. Like, that's not my point. There is no curriculum. I don't want a curriculum, and I'm not going to, children in my school will not take, my center will not take tests. They will not be labeled. They will not have grades. This is the whole purpose, is we're breaking down paradigms and rebuilding it. And you know who's telling me what they want, Catherine? Not the parents, the children. The children are telling
Absolutely.
me what they want, and I'm talking about 5-year-olds, 4-year-olds, all the way to teens and young adults who are graduated, looking back and saying, I wish I had this. I am listening with all of me, my ears, my heart, everything, with an open mind of, okay, what do you want? What do you wish you had? And I have the adults and the grandparents saying, oh man, I wish I had something like your program. You should do this, this, and this. And I collect it all. And that's what I'm trying to create. So it's very open, and open to seeing where it goes. The path is not set in stone, and there are a lot of people out there that aren't ready for this, and a lot of parents that judge what I'm doing. And you know what I say to them is, this is an alternative opportunity. This is not something that you have to do. No one's forcing you to go to Aramis Creative Learning Center. You have a plethora of opportunity. What I'm trying to do is just give parents who want something different for their children another opportunity for growth, and then we can expand as we see fit all around the world, because this is not just a United States of America schools, this is about education for the children of this globe. It's a global. And so where we go from here, in my opinion, the foundational level has to do with animals. And that's why I reached out to you, because I have experience with horses for many, many years, but I would say that it's one of the least experience that I have is with horses. I have a deep respect and love, but I haven't worked with horses that much. And about a year ago, horses started coming to me and communicating to me, interestingly, through the children. So I would do sessions with children. So the way I work is I have a session with a parent and a child, depending on their age. Sometimes the child isn't present. If the parent is working through soul healing and wants me to access information from their higher self and their guides to get more information about their journey and how we can help them. So the child doesn't always need to be present, especially for the young ones. So, but for the ones that are there and present, I speak to them really just for fun. Just tell me about yourself. I make it really light and not scary for them. And then when I communicate with their higher self, generally some sort of soul family member comes through, a spirit guide, but a lot of the times it's some sort of an animal spirit. And it could be anything, a wolf, a dolphin, you name it. I've heard it from all of the animals. And horses were coming through in droves, and they would come and introduce themselves. And they said that we are here to help. We are ready to help. Please put us in with your centers. Of course, they don't use the word please, but basically what they were saying is, we are willing and ready to help you. Let us help you. And I wasn't truly understanding it at first. I was like, oh yeah, I'm definitely going to have animals, and in the centers, I want children to be outside. They need to be outside of this fluorescent lighting with all the electromagnetic frequency waves and all the nefarious waves that we won't even talk about on this show, but we know that they're there. That's programming them and deactivating their light, all of that. They need to be outside. They need to be reconnected with nature. And animals will be at the forefront of that. But I wasn't truly understanding what the horses were trying to tell me until actually quite recently. I would say about 3 months ago. They finally came to me so much that I got it. And I said, oh, okay, I understand. You want me to make you the what do you want to call that? The center, or the focal point of the children's education, and helping them through PTSD and anxiety of what, nobody talks about what the children have gone through in the last few years. Yes, the adults have suffered. Many people have died. Many people have lost their jobs, their businesses, their homes, they're suffering. But what about the children? What have they gone through?
And the animals. I'm going to say the animals, because it can't just be, again, I know you and I have talked about this, but it can't just be that the animals are helping children. If the energy is from that things, it's completely off. It has to be that as part of the process, we're helping the animals as well. Because as you said earlier on, the way that humans have normalized animal abuse at so many different levels is just horrific. And so no wonder we're in this sort of soul dilemma of wanting to do one thing in our lives, but daily decisions taking us somewhere else. So I think, just that making sure that always the focus, which I know we've spoken about before, but it is a mutual two-way thing, because all the while it's coming from an energy of the animals are here to help the humans. Personally, I feel we've got a problem.
Right. Absolutely. And I think that that's what the message the horses have is put us in there with the children because they're going to get it. They're going to understand.
They do.
Because they do
Mm.
understand, you know. And if you watch any child that, you know, my husband really wanted to go to see a rodeo. I think I know he was a cowboy in several past lives. He's obsessed with all of that. And I didn't want to go. I don't take joy in watching animals for entertainment, but I went for him. And all three of my children, including myself, were watching when the, you know, when the cowboys the go try to, what's it called, lasso the calves, and
Mm.
they put them on their side and they time it, you know. It's an event, it's a sport. Oh my god, I couldn't even watch it. And my all three of my children said, I don't like this. They knew right away that there was something wrong with that. They didn't enjoy it. They didn't find any joy. They didn't understand why the crowd was cheering. And I said, I don't like this either. So
Adrenaline levels of that, and it's not just the calf, it's the horse doesn't want to be participating in that as well. And people say, well, they wouldn't do it if they didn't. But when an animal, they're a prey animal, and they have a very high flight response, so when you get that adrenaline level up in that sort of situation, they go into flight response and they will gallop or they will whiz round. But
yeah.
they can pick up and smell the adrenaline and the fear from the calf, and they certainly don't want to be part of that.
No, they do. I don't believe that they do either, Catherine. And I think we have a really great opportunity. And that's why I wanted to do this interview with you and many more to come with a lot of people is let's wake up, stop treating these animals with disrespect, because a lot of the false narrative that's going around, and it has been going around since I was young. And people told me this when I was a child, and I didn't believe it back then. And I certainly don't agree with it now, is that they are less than us, that they are not, just because they can't speak and walk on two legs and build a home, they are less than us. They are not equal. They're dumb. A lot of people call animals, oh, they're so dumb, you know. That's not the case at all. And if anything, most of them, if not all, are more evolved than every single human being walking on this planet. And
Yeah,
we have to understand.
sorry, I know I'm interrupting a bit, but let's see a human that can fly. Like, I've got Canadian geese. It's a bit of a joke. I'm obsessed with Canadian geese. They're so beautiful. And we've got a lot of lovely ponds where I live. And like, what human can fly from Canada to the UK with no sat nav, with no plane? So it's like,
Right.
I can't even get to the next city without my sat nav. So I know who's got better senses, and it's certainly the goose.
Yeah. Well, look at human beings. You know, we call it, they call it the fourth trimester for a reason. When we're born, we are completely helpless and we would die if we didn't have our mothers to care for us. You know, there aren't very many animals out there that require that. It's survive. They have to come out and they survive. We don't have that. It takes us another 4 to 6 months for our brain to finish developing. It's absolutely absurd. And so I think that this is a really unique and great opportunity for us to shift everything, every paradigm, and reestablish, again, I keep using the term human animal bond, because it is a balance. It's an equality that I'm trying to recognize. So yes, we are going to have horses with the children, but it's also about what the animals want. So the children are going to learn to communicate with these horses or goats or whatever animals that they're working on at the moment, and say, do I have your permission to work with you today?
Yeah.
Do you want me to ride you today? Is it okay? And they need to I'm going to teach them to use their intuition at varying levels to to understand their response. And then if they say no, they have to respect that. And
Yeah.
it's all about teaching them how to care for them properly. You know, it's so much more than that. You know, I have had a lot of other visitations, I guess you would call it, from other species over the last 9 months specifically, because it's really heightened up. And I've done several videos on the messages from the animal kingdom to what they've shown me the future will look like. And I don't see any more zoos. What I see are sanctuaries where land is designated for these animals to go back to their habitat. No more breeding these animals in these facilities. And they're able to be free. And if people want to go and see them, it's going to be a completely different environment. Like I saw platforms up high where horses that are rescued from being slaughterhouses, and rescued from facilities that are deemed not inhumane rather, are going to start to be distributed among people in all over the world. But let's just say for the US, because that's what I was seeing, that have land, and humanitarian groups will approach these people with land and say how many they can take, and they're going to be free and they're going to be properly cared for. Of course, the people are vetted very well, but the idea is that we create sanctuaries everywhere. There will be no more zoos. And if someone wants to see an animal, they're going to be able to travel to Africa to see an elephant. There shouldn't be any, as much as I love elephants, they're my favorite. They shouldn't, they're not here in the United States. You should go to Africa or Asia to see them. But when we have open borders, they will be able to. So everything is changing. The dynamics of everything is changing, but it starts now, and it starts with the children, because if we can make the children understand, they're going to grow up with a completely different thought process, as opposed to a lot of the adults that aren't buying it, that are so ingrained and so programmed that animals are food, or that the cowboys and what they're doing in the sport, that they oh, my animals love it. No, they don't love it.
They don't. No, they don't.
You think they love it.
I think, it's very easy for us to convince ourselves as a human species that our habits, right? So I've been having some very fascinating debates with people about veganism. Now, I don't like the term veganism. I much prefer plant-based. And there's a brilliant, I would encourage anyone to go and look at Earthling Ed, and people say it's controversial. And I'm like, why is it controversial for people that live in areas of the world where we have a lot of food choices and a lot of education about how to do it? Why is it controversial to stop torturing and killing animals when we don't need to? Now, I'm not talking about people who live in the remote tribes in Alaska or the remote tribes in the jungle and don't have supermarkets to go to. What I'm talking about is those of us who live in areas of the world that we do. And I think with what you're trying to do, what I'm so excited to see is I'm so excited to see the adults, because bear in mind, we all know, we're both mums, and we all know that children do what we do, not what we say. So if a child sees a person putting a choke lead on a dog and pulling it by its neck, or if they see it feeding it dry biscuits, or if they see someone putting a bit in a horse's mouth and metal shoes on, they think it's normal, and they grow up thinking that's normal. Mm-hmm. But when you see a child, I mean, I've got a rescue Shetland pony, and when I had lots of little children around, and when my children were younger, if the Shetland pony ever bit the child because the child was flicking its hand in its face or doing something or not asking its permission, there was always a reason. Never was there not a reason. And when I said to the child, why do you think you've done that? The child wasn't upset at all. They were like, oh, because I think I put my hand in its face, or I touched in the tip. It was only the parents that panic. Oh, the pony is bitten my child. It's like, well, why? Why? Because they don't bite for no reason. They bite because they've got no choice. They've given so many warning signals before, and if all of those are ignored, what choice have they got? They either turn into a complete victim and let themselves be abused, or they say, hang on a minute, and because they can't say it in a voice, they have to do it in a behavior. So the children are so wonderful and get it, and we know children ask why a lot, and they ask the most sensible questions. Why do you do this? Why do you do that? And humans immediately, oh, because we have to, we'll do this. Well, you don't, you don't have to ride a horse in a saddle. There's many brilliant riders that can ride really well that saddle. You don't have to put a bit in its mouth. Most of the time, you don't have to put metal shoes. There might be some remediation bits where a horse is transitioning from, so you don't have to keep them in areas where a stable. No horse wants to go in a stable. They're herd prey animals. Now, yes, do they need shelter from the elements in their herd, but no horse wants to be put in an individual stable separated, even if it is next door, because if you pen in a prey animal, you've taken away all their options to look after themselves. So there's so many simple things that you can do, but the beauty of it is it translates so much into then the choices that we realize we've got for ourselves. Because as humans, how many times do we put ourselves in the restrictive boxes that don't really exist? We think they exist. Take the face nappy situation. We've had legislation here. I've never worn one. People get told they have to. Well, nothing's happened to me for not wearing one. I'm still here. I just chose to say no, now just because so what is so exciting is that when we question everything, it's such a win-win situation because it empowers the animal, it empowers the humans, and they're so brilliant when you ask them for their permission. They're such willing partners in the journey. It's just a beautiful, beautiful thing to see.
You know, and they're our greatest teachers. I had a dog named Shiloh who passed away a few years ago, and she came to me in my life when I was about 27 or something like that. I can't remember. And I had one son at that point. My son was maybe 4 years old, and she was the most amazing dog. But she was the one that taught me really how to communicate. And I communicated with her, and she taught me so many things. She didn't want to be a dog. She was actually quite a evolved soul. She was a dog one time. Told me she didn't like being a dog, and everybody knew it. They're like, Shiloh does not. She didn't like to do anything dogs would do. She was more human than anything. And when you looked at her eyes, people would be like, I feel like she's talking to me and reading my soul. You know, she had this intense look. She was absolutely amazing. And when I learned Reiki. I'll tell you the story. I went and I learned, I had already learned all the Reiki, like Reiki 1 through 3, but then I wanted to take a Reiki level 1 animal class, just because I wanted to see what the instructor had to say about animals specifically. And interestingly, she never told me to ask the animals permission. So I come home and I'm so excited. And Shiloh is laying down in her bed, and she's up against the wall with her little cozy bed, and she's laying there, and I go up and I'm so excited. And I sit, cross-legged, and I put my hands out, and I'm like this close to her, and I put my hands out. I'm really eager to do Reiki on her. And I start, and don't ask her permission, of course. I don't even say anything to her. I just sit down, so disrespectful. I didn't know. And she immediately, within seconds, put her head up, started sniffing my hands, and ran out of the room. Literally, I'm not kidding. And I thought to myself, that's so rude. Like, excuse me, like, I'm trying to help you. And I literally think I said it out loud, like, so rude. And then when I calmed myself down, I communicated with her, and I said, what did I do wrong? And she said, I'm going to teach you something that is going to be so important for you moving forward, and you need to teach this. And at that point, I didn't know I was going to be teaching Reiki later on, let alone to pet owners or whatever, they're the owners of the animals that want to learn Reiki for their family members. And she said, you have to ask permission. And I said, well, how do I do that? And she said, well, you say it. You don't have to say it out loud, but you say, hey, I'm going to do this on you for why? And you wait for a response. And I said, well, I can communicate. I understand. But what about somebody else that doesn't know? And so she taught me, and this is what I teach in my Reiki classes, about how you stand. You ask permission to their higher self, or speaking to them directly, and you stand back and you give them an opportunity to feel you out from far away. And then you work your way closer as they give you signs that they're ready. Animal behavior is really important. And I try to teach my children from a very young age to pay attention to animals, because they will always tell you when something is bothering them, when they're afraid. They give you signs. And I teach my children that, because children sometimes they don't know better, so they'll go and they'll put their hand in front of in a dog's mouth, or a cat is in their carrier and they reach their hand, and the things that we know, oh, you don't do that, but they're innocent, they don't know better, and they need to be taught. And so I instill this in my children of what to look for when we have a Sphinx. I have a hairless cat. And my son is obsessed with cats. He's the cat, a little crazy cat boy, we call him. And he's probably been in Lyra many times. And he's learning about, cats are a little bit different. You can't just go up and pick them up and pet them when they're not ready for it. And I teach them, look at the position of the ears. Is their back, are they scrouching down? Are they backing up? Are they moving their head away? Is their tail down if they're a dog? Like, these are things that are clear tell signs. But if you don't listen and you push the boundaries, then they scratch, then they bite. And then like what you said, then the parents get mad and they spank the dog or the cat or yell at them. And it's like, how many warning signs do they need to give you to let you know that they don't like what you're doing? And that's what I want to teach the children, whether it's a horse, a goat, chickens, dogs, cats, doesn't matter. They need to understand that they give us signs, but they don't speak with their mouth. So they have to learn the ways that they are telling you. So what are some of the signs that horses give that we can tell the children that they give, that they like or dislike what they're doing?
Well, by the time you notice a physical sign, you've missed loads of things. So basically, say if I was going to go and catch one of my horses now, first of all, I would walk up and I'd observe their behavior before I even got too close to them. So if they were lying down, would I think it's fair to go and put a head collar on them, pull them up because I wanted to do something? That's like, you know, you just haven't got into bed at night and me saying, come on off to aerobics now, and literally yanking you out to do it. I'm not talking about emergency situations, folks. I'm not talking about if it's an emergency and you have to do that normal thing. So general level of respect, just like you would for a person, in terms of observing them. Are they, the more I know my horses' routines really, really well. So I know when they have their rest times, I know when they'll have their more energetic times. So if a friend says to me, do you want to take the horses out at this time? I will quite happily say, no, that's their rest time. Can we arrange it for a few hours later? Because obviously they've got their cycles. If you go up to them and you've got the head collar, I would never go up and just go up and put it on there. That would be like someone coming up to me and shoving a hat on or a thing around my neck or something. So I'd walk up to them and say, hi. When I say I'm saying this, Sherri, I would either say it in my head or out loud, depending on what you feel comfortable for. I'm well known for being mad, so I'm not embarrassed if I say this out loud in front of people. If you are embarrassed, it doesn't matter at all if you say it internally, just in your head, they pick that up. So I'd walk up, I'd have the head collar on my hand, and I'd be saying, is it okay, we're going to go and do this? And 9 times out of 10, they'd put their head in the head collar and off you'd go. But you shouldn't be tugging them. You shouldn't be tugging them. They should be walking nicely with you. And if not, you need to stop and ask why. What am I doing? Am I rushing? Am I being disrespectful? Do you remember what it was like as a child when your mum was in a real hurry and you'd be like dragged along by your hand because you were late or something, and it was really, really stressful? Yeah. So in terms of, there's body language and there's energy language. So horses, it's pretty obvious if they put their ears back, stretch their neck out, show their teeth, or turn their back on you. Those are very obvious no's. But before they've got to that stage, there's loads of subtle signs: twitching of an ear, looking at you, slight back away, as you said with the dogs and horses, slight change of the bum towards you, a bum towards you, unless they're asking for an itch, which is normally quite obvious, is a definite no, give me time, give me space. So what I encourage a lot of people do is to notice all these things. So when I'm working with people, I'll be talking all this through. And it's a bit like when people ride their horses. How often, you know, we call it going out and ride. I think you call it going out on the trail. And the horse starts to eat, wants to try and eat. But horses, most horses are kept in fields which have got very little variety in them. And a horse in the wild would typically eat about 70 species in a week. A little bit of this, a little bit of that. About 15% of their diet would be woody matter, twigs and things. Now, how many fields or pastures do you know that have got a really good variety of hedgerows, of trees, of different grass types, of herbs? So they innately know what they need to keep themselves in balance. And we take them out on a ride out of their boring little square field normally into nature, and they're like, fantastic, there's all the stuff here I need to keep myself going, but we don't let them stop and eat it. So that's like you being out of balance, me taking you to, say, a holistic therapist and not letting you take any of the herbs or crystals or healing that you need. And then we call them rude for it. I know I'm going off target. So ways around it, I would say, if you've got a limited pasture, if you haven't, most of us haven't got acres and acres of beautiful, varied pasture with loads of different things growing. So if you haven't, how about you make time 3 or 4 times a week to take your horse out in hand and just let them pick what they need? And then they're in balance. So then when you then say, can I go out on a ride with you? It's a fair swap. You're like, well, I've done this for you. I'd really love it. If you did, is that okay? Now we'll go off and ride rather than eat. You know, so am I giving back as much as I'm asking? So I know we've gone off the body language a bit, but it's a bit like, you know, if someone's, you see this a lot when children are learning to ride, because often they haven't got the strength to pull the horse's head up. But why is the horse desperate to eat anyway? Yeah. A horse is desperate to eat because it's lacking something, and you've taken it out of its boring little paddock where it can't get what it needs. and it can get it. And it's like, why would I not try and keep myself physically, emotionally in balance? This is what I need. You're the one that's being disrespectful by saying I can't need it. So this morning I got up an extra, really, really early. And before I even started work at 9, I'd already taken my horses out for an hour and a half hedgerow walk. And I'd already taken the dogs out because they need it. They really need it. This time of year, all the herbs are coming up. They need it to keep themselves in balance.
Yeah.
So there's all these wonderful things, but you get so much back from them when you do it. One, take the hedgerow walks for the horses or the rabbits or the dogs. We all know dogs like to eat certain grasses and not others. They'll drink from some puddles, not others. How much can we learn from that? So I've just done a little video. I'll put it up tomorrow probably. Okay, so what is your horse selecting? Go and have fun, research it. What are the medicinal properties of those herbs? Why do they need them now? How could you use them in your diet? It's just amazing. So the animals would give us so much body language, and it's just like children. I know a lot of people, I'm sure I've seen you maybe talk about it, classic thing, you have a family gathering, you've got a young child pass the baby or the toddler around who has to sit on everyone's lap, and you can see that the child doesn't want to sit on half the people's lap. And that's the same as our animals. Like, when I've got a couple of dogs that have come from really bad backgrounds in a different country, so when they come in, they don't want someone lurching forward and trying to grab and stroke them. Now, if the human's doing it because they love the look of them and they want to cuddle someone furry, I get it's from a good intention. But I don't like someone I don't know suddenly coming and going like that on my face. I slap them, and in the woods. And what I found is I've got 5 animals. So I've got 2 dogs that were born on the streets, 2 cats that were born on the streets, and a horse that was born wild. And my other animals were all born in captivity of some sort, we think. Some of the rescues we don't know, but it's likely. Now, the ones that were born in the wild, Sherri, their body language is amazing. So my Romanian dogs that were born on the streets and then taken into a shelter where they were with loads of other dogs of different species, their communication is brilliant. So they're very different, completely different personalities. One's much more of a freeze response, one's much more of a fight response. But when another dog comes up to them, there's so many warning signs. But a dog that's not been well socialized and born in a very humanized environment, they've lost a lot of the ability to communicate. So they don't pick up on those warning signs, and that's when there's a problem. Yeah. But they won't ever get themselves into that situation. They're given so many warning signs from like 500 meters away. You can see which dogs they're comfortable with and not. So it's just like me. I laugh now because we've not been allowed to do it. I love giving people hugs, but I'm the type of person that's got quite a big bubble. Unless I feel comfortable enough to invite someone into it. And I've always had that type of face where it's a bit too expressive. It gets me into problems. So if I'm like back off, it shows. So us humans are using so much non-verbal communication. How brilliant for the children. How brilliant for the children that they realize they don't have to shout and scream to get their message across. By the time a cat scratches you or a dog bites you or a horse kicks you, you've missed all those early warning signs. And most children don't get to that stage if they've been listened to in that way. If they get that they can be a bit like back off and someone picks up, oh, they don't want to be dumped on that person's neck, they're very unlikely to make the mistake with an animal. But if they've been brought up in an environment where all their early warning signs have been ignored, then quite often they're going to ignore the animal's early warning signs because it's not part of their learning experience.
Yeah, so many things you said are so relevant. And, I think that going back to the sitting on the laps of the adults, a lot of children are afraid of adults, or, one of the things my daughter said one time to me, because she's teaching me things. She's deprogramming me. She's the one of my three who's the youngest, actually, that has taught me the most. In 7 years of her life, I've learned more than in my whole life combined by anybody that's ever taught me, any book I've ever read, any show I've ever watched. She's incredible. And one of the things that she always tells me is, but why, mommy? And my son, my middle son, I was like that too. He needed an explanation, but once he understood, it was enough. He said, oh, okay, I get the logic. Okay, he's a thinker. But Aramis, she's like, even if I explain it to her, if she doesn't like it or it doesn't make sense or it doesn't feel right, she pushes the boundaries. But that doesn't make sense. But why? And I've had a lot of times to sit and think, why is it that way? And I've had to say to her, you know what, Aramis, I don't really know. And she said, why do we have to act this way with our she calls them elders, because my husband's side is Middle Eastern there, and so they're very strict about respecting your elders. And when somebody older walks in the room, everybody stands, and there's a matriarch of the family and ultimate respect, which I'm not knocking it. There's nothing wrong with that. That's their culture. But there are times when I thought, yeah, it doesn't make any sense, because I was taught completely the different. You earn respect. You don't just get it. And that's, so I was in culture shock when I was with my husband's family, because I was like, whoa, it took me 10 years or more to adjust to it. And my daughter is like, well, why? Why do I have to talk to that? Why do I have to talk to her? Why do I have to hug her? I don't want to. And there was a few people in the family where she's always been a little bit weird with. They're probably wonderful. Well, I obviously know them. They're wonderful people, but energetically, something about them is off-putting to them. And as their parent, as their mother, as their protector, or dad or grandma, whatever, whoever's the caregiver, if you tell your child not to trust what they're feeling and they're knowing, then they grow up to not trust themselves and they lose that intuition. If they're told time after time, just do it anyways. Oh, just listen to me. But why? Oh, because I said so. But why? Because that's how things are done. Like they scream, and their children are breaking down those boundaries. And I happen to have one that's very much like that. She challenges me all the time. And I think the children are here to do that. But I also think the animals are here to show us, hey, it doesn't have to be this way. Like you said, I don't need to have a metal bit in my mouth. I don't need to be hit in the ribs with your spurs. We don't want this anymore. I don't want to be slaughtered. There's so many things that have been programmed decade after decade, generation after generation. And it's our job right now. We have a really unique opportunity with this ascension, this period of time in humanity where we can reflect and say what works and what doesn't work and what can we change. And that's why you and I were talking right before this. I'm very spiritual. I like to teach. I like to guide. I like to be positive. I don't like to be in a low vibration. So I never do interviews where I talk about politics, nothing. I always am forward thinking. Okay, well, if you don't like this, what can you do better? People make up a million excuses. Well, I don't have the money to do this. I'm waiting for QFS. You could do a lot. I've done a lot, believe me, without QFS. I've spent my own hard-earned money. I have bartered. I have done so much. I've done everything I can possibly think of up until this point to get me where I am, especially with the Learning Center, without a lot of money. And so there are things that we can do if you just are motivated and you want to do it and you want to make change. And that's what this conversation is about and alluding to, and so many other things, is what can we do as humanity? What changes, anybody watching this, what you have a problem with? Okay. And what can we do now? What can you do to help change it? And my focus just happens to be, my love of animals has finally come back, which warms my heart, because now I can be with them again, but combine the children, put them together in a very unique, cohesive, respectful bond, so that we can move forward and make that change. But there are so many other changes that need to be made, of course, in politics, in medicine, in on how we eat, and intuitive eating. That's another thing. Like you said, is really important. You made a good point. The animals go out and they know innately what they need to eat, what their body's craving. And we've lost that. The only time where we're connected to that the most that I can say is when I was pregnant.
You're pregnant. Yeah.
Right? You have the most weird cravings. Your body and your baby tell you what you need to eat.
Absolutely. And if it doesn't recognize it, like the baby might need salt, and so you associate salt with crisps, or I think you call them potato chips, or whatever we call them, crisps, but it's actually the salt they need. And this is what's so beautiful. I mean, I'm so proud of what you've been doing, what everyone's doing, because it's so exciting. We do not have to wait. I have learned, I've had animals all my life. I'm really lucky that I grew up with animals. I've just lost my 16-and-a-half-year-old lab last week, and she was the easiest dog ever. I mean, she was the nicest, easiest dog. She was the easiest dog to train. She was so obedient. She was just wonderful in every way. And what I learned from her is how to really enjoy life. Whereas my two Romanian dogs, who are sisters, but completely different personalities. I mean, I've got a twin sister and I'm nothing like her. And my Romeo, who's wild off the forest, I have learned more from those animals than I've learned from any other animal, because they've got that life force where they're quite happy to say to you, no, you've got that wrong. So energetically, if I've had an awkward phone call, if I'm in a bad mood or I'm stressed, and I go and try and get Romeo, he's like, get out of my energy space. He will not come near me. He's like, and I could be, no, I'm fine. He's like, no, you're not. And when I'm walking, quite often I just let go of him and he just follows me. But if I then take a phone call and my attention's on someone else, not him, he'll bugger off, because he's like, how rude. This is your time with me, and you're not paying any attention to me. You're not even energetically connected on the phone. He's such a brilliant teacher. I wouldn't have it any other way. You know, a friend came out on the horse walk with me today, and she's really, really lovely. And he went up this steep bank and she didn't know how to get him down. I said, you don't need to know how to get him down. He knows how to get down. Let go, make sure he's rope safe, let go, and he'll find a safe way down. If you try and take him where you think he could slip, you know, I don't want to get on a horse that's lost all its intuition. And I can honestly say, every time, even with my dogs, when I've got it wrong, they've taught me so much, and they haven't been wrong at all. I can always sort of see where it is. And because of that, I've learned so much myself that I've really, really needed to learn. And it's a bit like when you've got friends that are surrounded by you that don't tell you those hard truths that you really need to be told. Mm-hmm. It might be nice, but in the long term, it doesn't do you any favors, because we've all got blind spots that we can't see. We've all got blockages that, if someone helped us remove them, could move us on to living a much more fulfilling life. And I want those animals, friends, people around me, whether they're two-legged, four-legged, winged, or whatever, or scaled, that are going to do me that, because I want to expand my consciousness, and I'm not going to get that by people that just are submissive and animals that submit. You know, we want it to be a two-way relationship, and when it is, it's just so rewarding.
It is rewarding. It is rewarding. And you know, one thing too, people need to, moving forward, they need to study animals and do a little bit of research before they get these breeds. One of my biggest pet peeves, and I'll tell you because I've been working with domestic animals my whole life. Okay. People don't do research. They pick an animal because they like the way it looks. And I will tell you that these animals have personalities that are very distinct. They have behavioral traits, and it makes them unique. But that doesn't mean that they are compatible with your lifestyle and your family. And this is the biggest issue we have with behavioral issues with pets. Is somebody gets a pet, they have no idea what this dog breed is about, and then they have behavioral issues. Well, let's say we got a person that lives in an apartment and they got a husky. Okay, well, huskies are high energy. They need to be outside. They have a lot of energy. They need to run around, you know, and then they yell at the animal because they're not acting the way they want them to act. And we need to stop that. You need to do research on the breed that you're getting and understand what you're getting yourself into. Can you handle it? You know, and if you can't,
every breed is an individual. It's like saying not all humans are the same.
Yeah, they have different.
Not all British people are the same. It's like not all Labradors. Yes, a Labrador's got a breed characteristic, but they're all individuals as well. Yeah. And it's such a good point, Sherri, because even I'm sick to death of people saying, oh, I got a guinea pig or a rabbit for my children or a hamster, and now they've lost interest. And I'm doing everything. What are you teaching that child? What are you teaching that? I've had, my children have had animals. I never call them pets because they're not pets. They're just four-legged members of our family. But they've had that, and there's not a day that's gone by that they haven't taken responsibility for them, because why would I do it? You can't, I'm not going to teach my children that it's a disposable thing, that you can pick it up and put it away when you're not. And it's these boundaries, isn't it? It's like, what are we teaching our children, and what example is setting? I've got a client who will remain obviously confidential, who's just got a husky, and they live in California, and they've got an Alaskan husky. Now, it's an Alaskan husky for a reason. The clue's in the name. A husky is not designed to live in a hot climate like California. It's ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous. A Labrador, how many fat Labradors do we see now? A Labrador should be moving up to 60 kilometers a day. Now, I'm not saying you have to do that. That would be a working lab. But it's a huge amount they're meant to be moving. It's just guinea pigs. It must not be kept on their own. They're highly, highly sociable animals. It's incredibly traumatic for them not to be kept in groups. And I would never keep an animal in a hutch, ever. You might have to put them in a hutch if you're taking them to the vet, or if you're moving house or something, but I'd never keep any animal in a hutch. But it is funny. It's like crates with dogs. It's like, when I grew up, we didn't have crates. We never crated our dogs. Mm-hmm. They might have to go in one if they had to go on a train or an airplane for a short one-off period, but they didn't sleep in crates. Like, you sit in the crate and see how you like it. It's purely a human convenience thing, because you can't be bothered to socialize them enough and make environment. Anyone who's had a toddler knows there's certain changes you need to make to your house to make it safe when you've got a little toddler, because you might have one that pokes their hand in the oven or in electric sockets or pulls a glass thing down. So every mother takes that as and father, sorry, being sexist there, completely accepted that if you've got a young child, you make your environment safe for them. If you've got a puppy or a kitten, you do exactly the same. You make it safe for them until they learn what's safe for them to chew and what's not safe for them to chew, and what's etc. Isn't it funny how we think that's normal?
And I think that the word pet, again, the word school and the word pet, we have to change our vocabulary, because pet gives this false narrative that it's yours. It's your appendage. It's your, what's the word I'm trying to think of? It's your
you'll own it. It's like a hand almost.
It's not. So that means that therefore you have the right to go to work and leave it for 8 hours a day. People don't understand that they are living beings just like us. They're quite intelligent. My husband has been wanting a Doberman for his whole life, and I didn't want a Doberman because because I'm a vet tech. Unfortunately, I have this gift of knowing what every breed has medically challenged. So I'm like, oh, I can't get that because they have this. I don't want, and it drives people crazy. But I can't help who I am. I know these things, and I didn't want to get a Doberman because I know about their personalities and how high strung they can be, high anxiety, and some of the health issues that they have. But finally, he convinced me to get one, and I said, okay, you know what? Actually, the Doberman's soul came to me and told me he was coming. That's what happened. And so I said, okay. And he said, I'm paired with him. So they know each other. So, but now we have this 2-year-old Doberman who is the most high-strung animal you've ever met. If he cannot be next to you at all times, he loses his mind. He goes crazy. He whines. He has severe anxiety issues because he wants to be. They're protectors. That's why they were bred. They're working animals. If they're not able to work, they feel a lot of stress, a sense of worry, because they're protectors. So if my children are running outside and I don't let him out, he's barking and scratching and going crazy because he needs to be out there with them. And so the fact that I understand that, I don't get upset with who he is, because I understand that, oh my gosh, he needs this. He needs to be able to fulfill what he feels that he needs to do to protect us. But the problem is, a lot of other people would say, oh, he has behavioral issues. You need to put him on medication, take him to a trainer. And I'm like, you need to pay attention to your animal, just like your children. Like you said, not all children are the same. They all have different personalities. You cannot parent. And this is I'm veering for a second. I don't know why, but You can't parent all your children the same. And this is how I
Exactly.
coach. I coach the parents that I work with for the last umpteen years. You cannot parent each child the same. They are different. So I have three, and God blessed me with three completely different children. I mean, night and day, all three of them. I have to parent them differently. I have to talk to them differently. And something you said about the sleeping, I never thought about this, but a lot of my clients call me and say my child, they hear me talking about my daughter a lot. And I say publicly, and I've said this for a while, for about 6 years of her life, no, 5 years, because she's 7, she hasn't slept by herself. Something spooked her when she was about 2, and she never would sleep by herself. So I slept with her in her bed for 2 years. After that, my husband was going to leave me. Not really, but it caused a big rift in our marriage. So I went back to my bed, and she went to her brother's rooms and kind of went back and forth. But the point is that parents started hearing me talk about that. And then they said, my son won't sleep in their room. They want to sleep in our room. And I started having sessions and communicating with the children. And they said, back in Lemurian times or Atlantis times, or even outside of here in their home systems and their home planets, our society separates us, but when in reality, we're meant to be together. And indigenous tribes and people do this as well, where everybody actually sleeps in the same room. Families
and their dogs do, and
their pets. Everybody sleeps together. Yeah, why are we? And I didn't
have one dog on their own.
I never thought about it though. I was like, gosh, they're telling me that this is what they're used to. They don't understand why they need to be in another room. They want to be together. Yeah. And I was like, oh my gosh, I never really thought about it that way. It's not always that they're afraid. We can't always, not all children are afraid by boogeymans and entities and darkness. Sometimes they just want to feel comfortable by sleeping in the bed with their parents. But our society has deemed that so wrong. And, and if parents are judged.
And it's a privilege, isn't it? And I mean, no one should have one dog. They're pack animals, dogs. Why would you have one? And of course, there are ways you can make them comfortable in your thing. But, I love this discussion. There's so much more we need to have. I hope people realize that when we're having these discussions, if there's something that triggers you, it's not blame. Honestly, if I could write a book about all the things I've done wrong as a human and an animal parent, I could write a series of books. Honestly, Sherri, I've done so much wrong on both stages. My husband and I always joke that we need a big counselling fund for our children because of all the cock-ups we've made. But the thing is, we are now at a time, never more than ever, where we're focused on moving forward. And it's like, I've reached a stage in my life where I am quite happy to put my hand up and say, oh my God, didn't know, I've done that completely wrong. Yeah. Help me. How can I do better? And that is what I'm hoping that people realize that our discussion is coming from, not like, oh my God, we've all done things because we didn't think. When you don't know the questions to ask, you don't ask the questions. But now we're at a time when we're asking so many questions, and it's exciting that we can rip up those rule books and completely start again.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think it's one of the most humbling things about being a human being is admitting that you were wrong and that you've made mistakes. But again, as we talked about throughout this entire interview, it's those mistakes that you learn from and you become a better person and a better version of yourself. And so don't kick yourself because you accidentally got a husky and you're one of those people watching this. And, like, I'm not judging, and we're not judging at all. But that's part of life. We're growing, we're learning together, and you and I are bringing awareness to a lot of topics that I believe are important right now. The children, the animals. Yes, there are a lot of other really important things going on in the world, but sometimes we just need to focus on something else. Something positive and something uplifting and forward thinking. And that's the purpose of today. So thank you so much, Catherine, for speaking with me today. I really, really enjoyed talking to you. And I hope you'll do this again with me.
I can't wait because there's so many things. And as you said, if you have got a husky in California, don't worry. There's lots you can do about it to make it happy. It's just the fact that, we learn from our mistakes. And as I said, I think I've made more than anyone else. So, I love this conversation. I'm so excited about what you're doing, Sherri, and I'm really excited about being part of it because this is where the real change happens. This is really where we get off our backsides, as you have done, and start creating our new future. And I just think everyone has got a bit of that jigsaw puzzle. And that's what's so lovely, is everyone's got bits that they can bring to the table for that. So thank you so much.
Yeah. Yes. Well, thank you all for watching this, and stay tuned for the next time that Catherine and I have a chat about the animals, the children, and beyond, whatever comes.
Yeah, lots of love, everyone. Have a great day. Thanks.
All right. Bye.
Bye.